Hello everybody and welcome to the first video in a series that I'm going to call Devlogs, how original, that is going to be a more general overview of the work that I'm doing relating to tanks. Many of you aren't going to want to watch an hour and a half or an hour of content every day, or potentially 2 videos every day relating to just raw development. So instead, I'm going to, on top of uploading content relating to that, I'm also going to be posting content such as this, which is going to be a more succinct version of what I'm working on. So I'm just going to show you what I've been working on today. So when you play the game right now, this morning I worked on all morning. It took me just a couple hours to get this functionality working with the turret following the cursor. So how that works is I'm testing the intersection point between the ray, which is coming from the camera, and basing that off the mouse coordinates. So there's a lot of math there, which I'm not having to handle. And then that's intersecting the plane, which is the flat plane where y is 0. And so I'm getting that point, and then I am doing some fairly simple math to calculate the turret rotation based on that, which you can view in source. So that works. I had a little bit of trouble this morning getting all 4 quadrants to work, especially these 2 down here. But I did eventually get that to work. The solution ended up being pretty simple. Now tonight, what I've been working on is something that I thought would take maybe 15 minutes at most. So when you move the tank around and you have control over it like this, and I hit escape, the tank was still following the cursor, and if I use WASD, which I was obviously pressing there, the tank would be moving around, which I obviously don't want. This is multiplayer. Everybody else is going to be moving around, but not this player specifically. So I thought, how hard can this be? Just simply remove the listeners whenever the game menu pops up. So first thing is that so I immediately ran into trouble, and just some very strange issue. So initially I thought it was the event, because there was a game menu close request event and an actual open event, and they will handle it a little bit differently. So I cleaned that up first. So that was definitely the most productive thing that came out of this. But I just could not get the event to. The event kept being called twice. So first it would enable. So if you hit escape now, the menu would not disappear because it would be disabled and then enabled immediately after. Like you couldn't even see a blip on the screen with the menu being enabled and disabled, of course. So now, of course, that's fixed. So as you can see now, it works. The actual problem ended up being, and I will show you this in code, was in the event handler. When you add a listener, it was called unshift or something like that. I got rid of it. So I was using the unshift method, which what that does is it puts your new listener at the front of the front of the array instead of the back, which is what push does. Push always puts it at the back, which is kind of what you expect. So I had initially done this because I had done this with the monitor event listeners back before the event handler refactor, so that your important listeners, the ones that were low, that you would now consider low level, those ones that you want called first, so that way those would be called first. I ended up taking that method of a push into this add listener function, when in reality I should have been using push, so that way new events would be at the end. Now the reason why it was being called twice is because when the event is called, it enables. So you cancel it, using your key, which is key down, And so that removes the game menu, which is fine, and then it enables the tank controls all within the same function. So now those tank controls are enabled, and a listener is immediately added for that DOM key down event, which subsequently is being called at the same time. So then the array is updated, and as the iteration is going over, it ends up calling the next event in line, which, given that I was using unshift, the listener that was being pushed in was, at the front of the list, which was the index that had already been called, was the listener for the tank. Now, the issue there was then, of course, so we move on to the next index, because now the array list length is 2. So we call that next event, which is the same event that we just called. So that took me 2 hours to figure out why that was happening. Of course, I created a critical issue here, because those events should not be being fired on so let's say the tank listener, that event should not be being called in this case. So what needs to be happening is the add and remove listener methods are going to have to temporarily suspend any methods or any listeners that they're adding related to an event when something is being called. They'll have to be added after the latest event has been called, because it's that's going to make a mess, because well, what the fuck? Yeah, see, case in point, we still got problems. So the issue was that listener was being added, and it shouldn't have been, because of course when I hit escape there, I don't want the tank to get any sort of input from that, because assuming that it was, like, let's say escape does something with the tank, like maybe you could, I don't know, you could do some action to it, you wouldn't want it to take place in this instance. So that was the problem there. So that's probably going to be it for today. So stay tuned for tomorrow or whatever.